Good afternoon, everyone. I'm your host, Mimi Ong. Welcome to today's press conference, which will highlight the momentous and the first cross-border partnership between the Philippines and Singapore. With the growth of e-commerce markets in the ASEAN region, the need for trading beyond traditional borders and adapting into an e-commerce ecosystem are becoming ultimate goals for today's businesses. Today's session will revolve around how the initiative with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Monetary Authority of Singapore will help fast-track cross-border payment services and establish further linkages between the two ASEAN countries. The agreement aims to make international transfer of remittances more seamless and instantaneous while supporting local businesses in the country. But what factors led to this historic partnership between the Philippines and Singapore? How will this cross-border partnership foster an efficient and frictionless e-commerce experience? Who will stand to benefit from the inter-country collaboration? What advantages will the partnership offer to the overseas Filipino workers and to micro, small, and medium enterprises here in the country? Finally, how can this cross-border partnership advance financial integration within ASEAN itself? Today, our guests will join us to answer those questions. But first, let's begin with a few opening remarks from Amor Maclang, convener of Digital Pilipinas and co-founder of Geyser Maclang Marketing Communications, Inc.
Good day at mabuhay sa inyong lahat. A warm greeting to our esteemed panelists and also our principals. Governor Benjamin Diokno of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, and of course, Managing Director Ravi Menon of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Of course, we have Assistant Governor Edna Villa of the BSP as well. For a third straight year, Digital Pilipinas is debuting in the Global World FinTech Festival, Singapore FinTech Festival stage, Asia being the new nexus of movement for open finance in the world. We always say Asia is the biggest fintech and perhaps the biggest neobank. We all know that between the US and Europe, they have 25 digital banking licenses. Asia has 40, 6 of which are Filipino. Truly, there has never been a better time to be in technology and to be Asian. Today, we are not only hoping to change the game for open finance and open banking, but the narrative for technology that will also sweep the country and will help drive a digital Pilipinas. First and foremost, our advocacy is underpinned by a Web 3.0 proposition. So we're all familiar and most likely all born with Web 1.0, which is really the exchange of data and information. Web 2.0, which is all about centralized gatekeepers, social media, and the like. Web 3.0, if we were to put it simplistically, is the monetization of the internet and also ensuring peer-to-peer exchanges, using decentralized hubs, and of course, in a manner that is properly governed. Today, we are very honored to host in the Digital Pilipinas World FinTech Festival platform and broadcasting to the rest of the world the signing of the agreement between the governments of the Philippines and Singapore. This cooperation agreement will help speed up and make possible the teching up of our country. I will leave it to our esteemed speakers and panelists to cover the implications of this agreement, especially for what the chairman of PPMI would always tell me, the people on the spot. Do not forget, Amor, the people on the spot. Now, today, we also celebrate the special relationship of Singapore and the Philippines as we close the 6th Singapore FinTech Festival. For Digital Pilipinas, this is highlighted by several things. Number one, the support of MSMEs in partnership with Proxtera, an educational micro-certification on the blockchain beginning this November and sandboxes that will cut across various national line agencies, taking off, of course, from the very successful models and sandboxes that have been executed by both the Bangko Sentral and the MAS. This week, Digital Pilipinas signed a partnership agreement with Proxtera, an enabler of digitalization for MSMEs around the world. Proxtera will be one of our digital backbones in promoting our entrepreneurs in the region and connecting them with the rest of ASEAN for starters. We also thank another progressive department in government, and that is the Department of Trade and Industry, for their support in this program. Digital Pilipinas also signed an agreement with Apex and Oxygen, which would allow us to undertake not just the successful sandboxes, also hackoliseums, and more importantly, how do we ensure we're able to embed a culture of innovation across various national line agencies in the Philippines. Our academic program, which will feature courses on various topics such as Web 3.0, open finance, fintech, and other nascent technologies. It's called Incremental Industry-Driven Technology Education Resources Authentication Testing Ecosystem. No one will remember that, but you can remember it as I iterate. This micro-certification will be on the blockchain via the Temasek fully owned company Affinity for portable identities. This is in partnership also with Elevandi, the advocacy arm of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. Digital Pilipinas will continue to be at the service of both the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the MAS, as it leads the charge in a very important pillar in teching up our country. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po kayong lahat.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Amor. Now, we now move on to our discussion, and joining us to talk at length about the historic partnership between the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Monetary Authority of Singapore is Edna Villa, BSP's Assistant Governor in Payments and Currency Development Subsector. The FinTech Cooperation Agreement, a signed deal between the governments of the Philippines and Singapore through the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, plans to foster seamless cross-border payments that will benefit overseas Filipinos' exports, imports, and tourism businesses. It can also bring in more investors. Let's know more about that. Assistant Governor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mimi. Thank you very much. So let me begin again by thanking all of you who are joining us for this Philippine segment of the World FinTech Festival 2021. You know, it's been a very exciting week together with the Singapore FinTech Festival. So much to absorb and so much to learn from all the speakers who covered a wide range of topics. Digitalization is indeed the way of the new economy. It is here to stay. But just as we are cognizant of that, we also need to be watchful of the form digitalization would take and the speed in which that form would evolve. In the next hour, our goal is to engage you in a dialogue to help us reap the benefits from the enhanced Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Monetary Authority of Singapore Innovation Function Cooperation Agreement. This was signed last Friday by the BSP Governor, Benjamin Diokno, and the Monetary Authority of Singapore Managing Director, Ravi Menon, at the sidelines of the SFF. In digital speak, the agreement is an upgrade to the first cooperation agreement which was signed in 2017. The 2017 agreement focused more on information sharing and was expected to be a referral system for country innovators. This 2021 Agreement 2.0, if I may call it such, now includes collaboration, specifically in payments innovation, to facilitate the linkage of the payment systems of the Philippines and Singapore for the reasons that Mimi mentioned earlier. Let me just emphasize that while the modality of the linkage is bilateral in nature, the vision is to base this bilateral arrangement on principles that will also be suitable for multilateral linkages in order to help future-proof the linkage. The upgrade of the agreement dovetails really well with the goal of ASEAN leaders to facilitate payments integration in the region that would usher further ASEAN economic integration. ASEAN is now the fifth largest economy in the world with a combined GDP of over $3 trillion. It's fifth and next only to the US, China, Japan, and Germany. Within the last 22 decades, ASEAN total merchandise also multiplied almost 4 times. Intra-ASEAN trade has continuously accounted for the largest share of ASEAN total trade. So there are macroeconomic reasons for a linkage in payments to be pursued. So given this, ASEAN member states have agreed to prioritize the establishment of interoperable cross-border real-time payment systems, which can support the increasing globalization of trade and investments, as well as growing tourism and manpower mobility in the region. The BSP has been in dialogue with several ASEAN central banks to make the seamless flow of funds between our countries a reality. We have chosen Singapore as our starting point for this linkage. The strong economic relationship between our two countries and Singapore's experience in bilateral and multilateral payments connectivity, which we can learn from, makes Singapore ideal to work with in this effort. Agreement 2.0 is our groundbreak for formal dialogue between BSP and the MAS as we seek to link the Philippines' InstaPay and Singapore's PayNow. We hope to realize insights from you, our potential beneficiaries and collaboration partners from the banking, fintech, insurance, and MSME sectors as we plan the work ahead. As much as the BSP is a central bank and a regulator, we are also imbued with the role to be a catalyst for the continuous development of payment systems. In performing this mandate, we explicitly recognize that improving the quality and widening the variety of financial services can uplift the welfare of Filipino consumers and businesses. The BSP will continue to provide an enabling regulatory environment that fosters the development and use pioneering solutions in the financial and payment services industry, while ensuring that related risks brought about by these innovations are properly identified and timely managed. So as I conclude, we're grateful to Digital Pilipinas for giving us the platform to hold this consultative dialogue. Thank you to Ms. Amor Maclang and your team at Geyser Maclang. I also wish to express my appreciation to our distinguished set of speakers and to you, our audience. I look forward to a lively discussion and creative suggestions for our way forward in this effort to build cross-border payment services that are responsive to the needs of the Filipino people whom we serve. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you for that very informative insight on the beginnings and significance of the financial technology agreement between the Philippines and Singapore. Once again, BSP Assistant Governor Edna Villa. Now, to give more context on the BSP-MAS FinTech Innovation Function Cooperation Agreement and its implications to the economies of Singapore and Philippines, let's watch a partnership video featuring BSP Governor Benjamin Diokno and MAS Managing Director Ravi Menon. Take a look. All right, I think we're having some technical difficulties with the audio of the video. We're gonna try to fix that. I hope everyone can see the video. We're going to try to unmute the video. Once again, we are today witnessing, talking about this very historic agreement between Singapore and the Philippines. It's meant to create a very seamless cross-border payments transactions between the two. As the Assistant Governor mentioned earlier, this is actually the 2021 Agreement 2.0. This is built upon a 2017 agreement that was meant to broaden the scope of fintech collaboration between Singapore and the Philippines. She did mention that right now it's a bilateral effort, but the main goal is to make this multilateral, an effort pushed by all the members, by all constituents of ASEAN. Of course, ASEAN is a very big market. You've got 70% of the population of the ASEAN region still unbanked. So there's a lot of potential really for this sort of agreements between the members of the ASEAN region. Once again, we are witnessing a historic moment here. It's going to grow the e-commerce markets in ASEAN region, trading beyond traditional borders and adapting an e-commerce ecosystem. We've got an interesting lineup for this afternoon. We're going to know more about what this would mean for OFWs, for Filipinos, MSMEs, even OFWs living outside of Singapore. Will they be benefiting from this sort of agreement? So we're going to find out with our esteemed panelists later. We'll also talk about what about the rules of engagement? Do we have global standards to direct how this will play out? Are our rules similar to the rules of other ASEAN nations? So when we link up, we're all following the same playbook. We'll also find that out later. We've got an exciting lineup of speakers for this afternoon. We've got from the BSP Director, Raymond Estioco later. From PPMI, we have Carmelita Araneta. We've also got from OF Bank, the CEO and President, Leila Martin. She's going to talk about the benefits for OFWs. And of course, Amor Maclang, she's the convener of Digital Pilipinas. We also have Todd Schweitzer. He is the CEO of Brankas. Now, Brankas is into customizing financial infrastructure solutions for financial institutions. Imagine bespoke solutions for payment processing. So we're going to know more about these efforts and how they all connect, how they all tie together through this agreement between Singapore and the Philippines for the cross-border payments system. So I think we are still trying to get back, to get the video back online. But for now, if I may acknowledge the presence of some of today's Philippines tech champions in banking, insurance, mobility, and payments. They are joining us this afternoon. You've got Lot Shu Zibel from the Asian Development Bank. We also have RV De Vera from Union Digital. They're joining us as well. Roland Oscudo of CISM PNB, Attorney Emma Teresa Cabochan, Asia United Bank, Ana Sofia Publico of Sendit, Ronnie Francisco of InLife, Roy Miklat of One CISP, George Mina, PLIA. We also have Tanya Hotchkiss of Kantilan Bank or Can Bank, Hok Lai Chia of Gift. We also have Jojo Malolos of GoTime, Christian Reyes, also from Sendit, Robertson Dick Chiang of Dragon Pay, Nauman Mustafa of Coins.ph, Diane Perez of Grab Philippines, Jovi Tapiador of FPH, of course, Mr. TJ Limcauco from BPI. We also have Emerald Valiente of PruLife UK, Attorney Mark Godiceta, and Paulo Del Puerto of Moneybees. As you can see from the stakeholders who are joining us this afternoon, this is a wide-ranging scope for the topic. This is going to touch on all aspects of our lives. This momentous historic deal between the Monetary Authority of Singapore and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. This is going to affect not just OFWs, not just those in Singapore, but all of us and the way we do business, especially now that the digital payments is simply the name of the game. It used to be the future. Well, the future is here. I think we are now ready for that video. Let's watch this.
which builds on the existing agreement we signed in 2017. We are honored to have with us today Mr. Ravi Menon, Managing Director of Bonan, and Assistant Governor Edna Villa, who oversee the payments and currency management sector of the Philippines, and MAS's Chief Intake Officer, Mr. Sumnendu Mohanty. Without further ado, may I invite MD Ravi to deliver his remarks. MD, please.
Thank you, Raihan. Very good afternoon to Governor Jokno and colleagues from Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP. I'm pleased we're here today to enhance the BSP MAS FinTech Cooperation Agreement, which we first signed in 2017. This will cover a new collaboration in payments-related innovation. It'll also lay the groundwork for BSP and MAS to jointly explore linking our respective national real-time and QR code payment systems. We're confident that a successful payment system linkage between the Philippines and Singapore will result in faster, cheaper, secure, and more accessible cross-border fund transfers. The key beneficiaries will be individuals and SMEs who will be able to make cross-border payments directly to one another simply by using their handphones to a mobile phone number or a QR code. The use case for cross-border payments between both our countries is strong, with almost 3 billion Singapore dollars in remittance flows recorded between Singapore and the Philippines in 2020. This interoperability between our national payment systems will further boost cross-border trade and e-commerce and better position our SMEs to tap on growth and business opportunities in each other's markets. It will promote financial inclusion as well. And it will help bring our countries one step closer to an ASEAN network of linked real-time retail payment systems that can support digital trade, innovation, and foster economic integration that's needed for a stronger post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, MD. May I now please invite Governor Jokno to deliver his remarks. Governor Jokno, the floor is yours.
To the Monetary Authority of Singapore, Managing Director Ravi Menon, senior officers of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. When I took the helm at the BSP, I clearly laid out my priority agenda. That is to enable universal access to secure, affordable, and convenient digital services to more financial consumers as a way of bringing the central bank closer to the Filipino people. To accomplish this goal, we intensified our efforts to undertake digital transformation on a nationwide scale. We even expanded BSP's capability by creating an entirely new sector that's focused on digital payments. Gradually, we expanded use of digital payments in the country from only 1% in 2013 to 20% by the end of 2020. This development affirms that we've done significant progress in the domestic sphere. Now we are ready to extend the reach of the enhanced retail payments of the Philippines beyond our borders. A seamless cross-border payment system can facilitate remittances, tourism, trade, and investments. All of these activities have fueled our country's development before the pandemic, and they would also be vital for our post-pandemic recovery. We chose Singapore to take the next step with us, given our strong economic and social ties. Other than hosting many Filipino workers, Singapore is one of our top trading and tourism partners. 4 years ago, the BSP and the MAS signed the Innovation Function Cooperation Agreement to provide a venue for collaboration in the fintech arena. Today, we are enhancing the agreement to include joint undertakings in payment innovation and formally commence the work on the possible linkage of our past payment systems between the Philippines' InstaPay and Singapore's PayNow. I'm confident that this collaboration would further strengthen the ties between our two nations. So let me take this opportunity to thank the Monetary Authority of Singapore for our continued engagement for the shared vision of an integrated, multilateral, and interoperable cross-border payment system in the ASEAN region. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Jokno. As mentioned by MD Ravi and Governor Jokno, a payments linkage between the Philippines and Singapore will bring about significant benefits to individuals and businesses in both our countries. It will also be an important step towards our end goal for ASEAN to be the first region with an interconnected network of faster payment linkages. At this juncture, may I invite both MD Ravi and Governor Jokno to sign the enhancement to the 2017 BSP MAS FinTech Cooperation Agreement, please. May I now request for MD and Governor to raise the respective signed documents to the camera for a photo. Thank you, MD and Governor Jokno. Thank you. And with that, we have come to the end of this virtual signing ceremony. Thank you again, MD and Governor. Thank you also to everyone for tuning in today. And we wish everyone a great day ahead. Take care and stay safe.
That was one insightful and possibly historic video we're all going to look back to and say that was a moment that changed the game for fintechs here in the Philippines. It is truly incredible how a cross-border partnership can uplift economies, both Singapore and ours. Now, I think we're ready to proceed to our panel discussion. We would like our panelists to please open their cameras. We're going to introduce you one by one. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Raymond Eschoko, Director of Payment System Oversight in Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Director Eschoko is a man who wears many, many hats. He is a certified public accountant, a veteran central banker, and he has a master's degree in business administration. We also have Ms. Carmelita Araneta. She's the General Manager of the Philippine Payments Management, Inc., or PPMI. She has more than 4 decades of professional experience in banking and commerce and has worked in the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas as Director, Metropolitan Bank and Trust Company as Executive Vice President. We also have Ms. Leila Martin, President and CEO of the Overseas Filipino Bank, or OF Bank. Also joining us, Mr. Todd Schweitzer, Chief Executive Officer of Brankas, which offers open finance tech solutions to financial institutions and digital businesses across the Asia-Pacific region. And finally, let's all welcome Amor Maclang, convener of Digital Pilipinas, a movement that aims to influence change through technology and innovation across the local and global spheres. Ms. Maclang is also the co-founder of Geyser Maclang Marketing Communications, Inc., and the Executive Director of FinTech Philippines Association. All right, I think we are ready to get the ball rolling. I want to direct the first question to Director Eschoko. Director Eschoko, we did hear from Assistant Governor Edna earlier how this new agreement is like 2021 Agreement 2.0. It's a bilateral agreement for now, but the hope is that it becomes a multilateral conversation eventually. The original deal was done in 2017. So much has changed from then until now. Could you give us a sense of how big the change has been in this space? And of course, when you talk about multilateral deals, after Singapore, who else are we talking with for another deal of this sort? Director Eschoko?
Okay, thank you, Mimi, for the question. Well, the first FinTech Cooperation Agreement was signed in November 2017 between the BSP and MAS. It provides the referral mechanisms, the potential joint venture for FinTech companies and others. But the enhancement that we that was signed last Friday is an enhancement to that fintech cooperation agreement. And this enhancement formalizes the exploratory discussions on the possible linkage between Singapore and the Philippines' real-time and QR payments. And we both agreed to emphasize the payment use cases in the previous fintech agreement. So this is the difference now of the new or the enhanced fintech agreement that we have. We are more focused on the collaboration on cross-border and payments. And when we say cross-border payments, we envision it to be faster, cheaper, more transparent, and more inclusive. Gains to be derived therefrom can help support our economic growth, promote international trade, and grow financial inclusion. But this is endeavors just a start. We will, there's a constant communication with ASEAN neighbors to also enter into agreements, cross-border agreements with them. Singapore was just the first because of our strong economic relationship with them. And they have the bilateral and multilateral experience as far as payments connectivity is concerned, which we can learn from.
Sir, I'm going to have to push you a bit on that one. Among the ASEAN neighbors you're in talks with, who do you think is realistically going to be the next country that will sign a deal similar to this with us? Is it going to be Thailand?
Well, gauging on the economic activity or the transactions between the two countries, it's either Malaysia and Thailand.
Okay, we're going to be looking forward to the next good news on that front. Carmelita, I want to get to you, Ma'am Milit. We know that technology, they're saying that technology, specifically in fintech, the center of power is starting to move to Asia. In that space, what is the role of the Philippines? Ma'am Milit?
Yeah. Thank you, Mimi, for the question. Actually, before answering that, I would just like to introduce the PPMI because this is the payment system management body that has been accredited by the central bank, by the BSP. And in that context, we have 140 plus members, which are financial institutions supervised by the BSP. And this is the organization which has been mandated by the BSP, the expectation of which is to ramp up, develop digital payments initiative. So in context with the signing now, we are very happy to say that we're fully supportive and we will collaborate with the BSP as we have been collaborating ever since we were set up in 2017. So in response to your question, the PPMI members, are now engaged or participating in two payment systems. These are the PesoNet and the InstaPay payment systems. The PesoNet is, of course, batch. It's settled in batches with the BSP. But what we're looking at in this particular initiative between the BSP and MAS is really the InstaPay payment system. So the InstaPay payment system, which was launched in April 2018, is now gaining traction. In fact, from a measly 100,000 transactions when it started in 2018, we are now averaging monthly 38 to 40 million transactions. So that actually has driven the real-time payments. Now, in the processes also, last September or November 2019, PPMI launched the QR code. Okay, this is the standard, the QRPH standard, focusing mostly at the start on P2P, account-to-account transfers. And in October 12th, we launched together, of course, with the BSP, the QR payments to merchants, or P2M. So this really is something that sits or falls squarely within the real-time payment streams in PPMI, the initiative between the BSP and the MAS. And so even if we have just started the P2M and the P2P, and we hope to be able to have our OFWs in Singapore just send a text to their loved ones here, and they will simply just say, nag-instapay na ako sa inyo. So it's something like that. But as far as technology is concerned, our individual participating institutions are actually in the forefront of all of this. They have, they're under examination by the BSP, so their digital payments initiatives are always being enhanced to go into the different use cases that the PPMI has identified in the roadmap. So that's something that we would like to make mention also.
Ma'am, you mentioned about the QR code, which you just launched for P2P and P2M. What's the take-up like? How many are currently using it now?
Okay, for P2P, we actually have about 20 plus participants. That's
Okay.
When I say participants, these are the member institutions. Okay, we have the commercial banks, universal banks. We also have a rural bank and some thrift banks, and mostly EMIs.
Okay.
So because we have to start, Mimi, with a QR standard, because we cannot have different QRs running around in the country. So for safety, reliability, and security, and interoperability, we have launched together, of course, with the BSP, the QRPH standard. So we have our own logo about that. And so that's something that is really gaining traction also. Last August, QRP2P breached 1 billion pesos in value. Okay. So, and then for QRP2M, which was just launched, we have 12 participants already, and hopefully more are expected to join soon.
Ma'am, very quickly, do you think when you answer these two questions that these are indicators that the gap between the banked and the unbanked is finally starting to narrow?
Yes, it's a very big yes, because even at the PPMI side, at the start, this has always been part of the roadmap and the advocacy of the BSP. We are very mindful of the 70% inclusion target of Governor Jokno and 50% digital payments.
Okay, let's now let's talk about the beneficiaries of this landmark deal. Let's go to Ms. Leila Martin of the Overseas Filipinos Bank. Your client base, the OFWs, concretely, how will they benefit from this in terms of cost reductions, in terms of time savings, ease of transactions or doing business? And will this also have a positive impact on OFWs not based in Singapore?
Thank you for inviting Overseas Filipino Bank in this forum. Let me start, Mimi, by saying that we are indeed in a very interesting and exciting phase in our digital transformation journey, with the Philippine government led by our Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in its thrust of continuously improving the overall digital environment for overseas Filipinos, together with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, has expanded the coverage of the existing FinTech Cooperation Agreement to include the infrastructure linkages for cross-border payments. With the full support of the government and the cooperation of all the stakeholders, OFWs, especially those in Asia, can look forward to a strong enabling environment that will definitely accelerate and ensure that their adoption and use of cross-border payment systems would be within an ecosystem with appropriate safeguards against frauds and one that can ensure integrity of data with considerations on the regulatory, administrative, and statistical frameworks. Essentially, with cross-border interoperable payment infrastructure, where existing Philippine payment systems is directly linked across borders, overseas Filipinos and their beneficiaries in the Philippines would be at the receiving end of a host of advantages in terms of sending and receiving remittances. Our overseas Filipinos will be able to directly send remittances or transfer funds across countries to their families using their accessible device, which is our own mobile phones. Our beneficiaries, in turn, will receive their remittances within minutes as compared to the existing number of days. Presently, that it takes for remittances to be credited to destination accounts. Our overseas Filipinos will likewise realize cost savings, Mimi, as remittance fees and charges will be greatly reduced, as our OFWs will not have to go through intermediaries that result to them paying more for fees and charges. And of course, that is depending on the number of intermediaries that handle the remittances. And our OFWs will be assured that they are transacting within a cross-border payment platform that is secure, safe, and convenient, which is very, very critical, as all of us would like to manage our finances and ensure that our management takes with it the risk and the control of the funds that we have right now. Let me end by saying that the Overseas Filipino Bank, as the official digital bank of the Philippine government, is ready to respond to the government's call in ushering in this innovation on cross-border payments. We are so looking forward to a close collaboration with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, together with our co-panelists, Ma'am Melita Raneta, with both digital and traditional banks, likewise with fintech partners and other public and private stakeholders in enhancing our existing payment systems with a focus on enabling a simplified cross-border payment processing, fast access to payment channels, and a seamless checkout experience for our global Filipinos. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Leila. I want to go to Amor now. Leila talked about the demand side. What about the supply side? How will this deal will this deal open up new markets for our local fintechs now? How? I mean, will this mean a digital wallet based in the Philippines can offer products and services to someone in Singapore, for example?
That's really the intent, Mimi. We've had these many chats, and the most recent one being this morning. The Holy Grail, whether it's in payments or for retail or e-commerce via our other advocacy, which is Business Without Borders, is really about cross-border interoperability. And the intent here is someone with a mobile phone in the Philippines can directly transact with another MSME, for example, in another country. And really the biggest challenge, aside from the infrastructure, and I'm not just, when I talk about infrastructure, it's really not just about, internet connectivity. There are other aspects to it. What we're hoping to do is to create an ecosystem wherein really moving your money becomes frictionless and becomes efficient. Mimi?
Amor, what is, there's a connection here, and we'll get to that. What is this year's theme for Digital Pilipinas, and how does this fit into that theme?
So this year, our advocacy is really predicated around Web 3.0. So I mentioned that earlier. This is really a fun stuff for me to talk about. Web 1.0 is really the exchange of information between people. 2.0 would be your social media hubs. No? Web 3.0 is how are we able, you and me, for example, to transfer, create value, transfer value, without having to go through intermediaries, no? Using decentralized technologies like blockchain that are unassailable and also immutable. So that's, in a nutshell, what we're hoping to do. And when many people ask me about it, it's all about show me the money at the end of the day, you know? How do we move money seamlessly in and out, whether through payments, remittances, investments in various industries that need teching up the most? So we kicked off this year, and it'll continue to be a pillar advocacy for us next year to champion industries like energy, real estate through prop tech, insurance and health through insurtech and health tech. And of course, fintech will continue to be an underlying advocacy for us as the fire that really invigorates many of these. Now, one important aspect that I think we need to mention is cybersecurity and cyber defense. Because in the same manner as General Manager Milit has mentioned, there's been an acceleration in transactions. In the same breath, last June, we have been put in the FATF gray list, and collectively, we have to work together to get ourselves out of it.
Mm-hmm. Speaking more of cybersecurity, Director Eschoko, how will this partnership address cybersecurity concerns?
Well, our local banks are strictly adhering to the regulations on cyber security issued by the BSP. And we ensure that these are strictly being observed. And they are also required to report to us any breach in security once it was discovered. So as far as the BSP supervised financial institutions, we closely monitor their implementation of cybersecurity, and there is off-site monitoring as well. So I I believe the local payments industry are better prepared as far as cybersecurity is concerned, and they adhere to the international standards.
Todd, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the best practices in cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you, Mimi, and thank you so much to my fellow panelists for, I'm learning a lot so far, actually. First off, I think the Philippines is really well positioned for this initiative. Brankas operates across Southeast Asia. I happen to be based in the Philippines. And so personally, I've been so impressed at how much action there has been in digital banking and fintech in the Philippines over the last even 2 or 3 years. As Ma'am Melit pointed out, that InstaPay has gone live and is now processing 40 million plus transactions a month. We now have a digital bank serving the needs of the OFW population, which is so important to the Philippine economy. And we have a number of new initiatives supporting digital payments and data security, an open finance circular, which I think is groundbreaking for Southeast Asia, that sets the guidelines for a industry-led framework for open finance, but that allows for enough innovation and new products such that new open finance product can be developed while ensuring the safeguard of customer data and making sure that anytime a customer is, as Mamali pointed out, if they in a world where they can send a payment across border using a SMS message, that they're doing so using secure APIs, that they are providing explicit consent every time they send a transaction or every time they agree to share data. And then making sure that they're following best practices. The benefit, I think, that the Philippines has for open banking is that it's actually, there's a global standard now. Open banking started in Europe more than 5 years ago, and I think the Philippines has the benefit of looking at markets like the EU, Singapore, Australia, who have implemented quite rigorous regimes around new payments products, cross-border and domestic. So I think some of the best practices in cybersecurity, I mean, Brankas operates in Indonesia, Singapore, where we've worked with the MAS on a number of initiatives related to data and digital banking. I think really it is ensuring that if there's an extension of the bank's products that are used in a third-party channel. So that could be a customer sending a text message payment. It could be connecting a wallet to a bank app so that you can do easy transfers, or whether it's sharing of your personal data in order to qualify for a new loan, that you're doing so in a way that uses the bank level standards of protection and always with customer consent, so that the customer has choice to share their data or to initiate a payment, but is doing so with the highest level of data and security standards in place.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Todd. Speaking of open banking, here's a question for PPMI's Ma'am Melit. What is the position of the PPMI on open banking? And to be honest, how open really is the banking industry to this? Ma'am?
Thank you, Mimi. Actually, another unit or another organization in the Philippine banking system is looking into this. It's the Bankers Association of the Philippines. They're now in close collaboration with the BSP for that. In the case of PPMI, we ensure that it is the national retail payment system that we are mandated to implement, and open banking has not yet been discussed in our own organization. So probably Director Stioko already has some ideas of the coordination that's being done by the Bankers Association of the Philippines with the BSP.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Ma'am Melit. For Director Estioco, what about the enforcement of open finance? How do you plan to make sure that we do it right and that the banks actually follow?
There's an ongoing discussion on this. We need to balance everything so as not to expose us to this. What we would like to manage is allow this innovation to take place, but we need to identify the risks and manage them. So there is this ongoing discussion especially with the banks led by the Bankers Association of the Philippines. My apologies, I'm not in a privilege to discuss what's on the table right now because there's nothing concrete yet. It's still ongoing.
But sir, this cross-border seamless payment system between Singapore and the Philippines, what's going to govern that? Who's going to call the shots? What policies will that follow? Is there going to be a regional payment council? Will there be a playbook for everyone, a global standard for everyone to adhere to? Or is everybody going to be playing it by their own rules?
Okay. Allow me to focus first on the agreement between Singapore and Philippines. What happens is we just formalize the exploratory discussions of linking our real-time payment systems or the QR. Moving forward, we need to assess and understand what is there on the ground, what's happening, what are the pain points, what are the friction. So we would need to consult the stakeholders, especially the overseas Filipino workers, the MSMEs, the trade businesses, those involved in exports and imports, and others. So we need to have these inputs for us to be able to come up with a relevant or responsive policy. Then also, second stage is we have to collaborate with the industry players, especially the banks, led by PPMI on how to address the pain points and how to improve the cross-border payments.
Mhm.
We need to consult with other stakeholders like the fintech companies on the opportunities that can be created for cross-border payments. We can either build on the existing business arrangements or make a new ecosystem or new business models. So these are all in discussions. And once we have all of these, we can now form the roadmap of how to implement and make effective that these cross-border payments. Now, with regards to the, if let's say there are already several cross-border arrangements that we have and who is going to manage these, we have not identified that yet. And this venue is a very welcome venue because this starts the consultative process. We would need to have some type of information we need.
Very quickly, Director, so we're in the consultation phase. What's the timetable? Yes. When do we expect this to really take off for all of us to finally start using the system with the rules already completed? Because I know that Malaysia and Thailand, for example, they started their talks in 2020. They're supposed to complete everything and start implementing by next year. So it does take time.
Yes, same as us. We need to have this in place soon.
Okay, soon. All right. We have more questions here from members of the media. What is the maximum daily amount that will be allowed for the transfer of money from Singapore to the Philippines and vice versa under the payment integration? Do we have that already, sir?
Well, as I have said, there's no agreement yet.
No agreement yet. But
then we take note of the limit, the transaction limit under InstaPay and the transaction limit allowed under the fast payment of Singapore. So we have to discuss this as we move forward.
For context, the deal between Thailand and Singapore, the cap is at 1,000 Singapore dollars. So that's the cap for that deal. Another question here, will the payment integration be built entirely using the DLT or is it going to be blockchain platform?
For a start, we are using the QR standard.
QR, okay. And here, the governor, this one's from another attendee asking, the governor mentioned a linkage between the Philippines' InstaPay and Singapore's PayNow. Are the rules governing this, will it fall under remittance regulations?
As I've said, we are still in the consultative stage. Then we have to revisit what are the existing regulations that we have. So we would know if a new regulation is needed or just right on top of the existing regulations on remittances.
Clearly, what I'm getting from this conversation is this is a start. It's a powerful, historic start, but much work needs to be done. I'm looking at Amor now. I know that Amor is going to play a very important role here. Amor, what is the role of DP? How do you help move the conversation forward from this deal, from an agreement to actual implementation?
As with many of the priority projects that we have in order to help tech up our country, you are absolutely right. This is a critical component because if money is not moving freely in and out in a manner that's efficient, then it could either be the deterrent or the impetus to create more movement in the economy. And Digital Filipinas is always at the service of both the Bangko Sentral and also the Monetary Authority of Singapore to bring together a whole of nation and a whole of society approach to any problems that could be solved with technology. So to be more specific, we regularly have meetups with the members of the insurance sector, Our friends from PLIA and PIRA are all here extremely supportive of this initiative, also of the fintech sector. Our chair and our trustees, Attorney Mark Gariceta, Jove Tapiador, and of course, Ms. Ida Tiongson are all present today. And of course, we've recently collaborated with the BAP, with MD Ben, to talk more about cybersecurity collaboration. And so we will be more than happy to bring together not just best practices from the region, but also at the same time to connect our local ecosystem with what the best and the brightest, so we could move forward with this initiative. Mimi?
Amor, what about the fintechs? Because participants under InstaPay, they're mostly banks and EMIs. How about the fintechs? Can they also directly participate in this InstaPay to connect to Pay Now?
You know, this is, I think, exactly why, aside from education and MSME integration, one of the things that we really are pushing in Digital Filipinas, which we had discussed this morning, Mimi, is all about the strengthening of other aspects of our digital infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about connectivity. This would be also in terms of enhancing cybersecurity and at the same time, making sure that API, that we all talk together in an API language, in an API economy, because the movement of data, not just of money, is going to be what will define. And for us to be able to work in trust and in confidence, and I talk about the players in the ecosystem, they need to know that, they need to be able to communicate straight with each other. So I understand that many of us might not be technologists here. And in my multiple talks, I basically say APIs are like the language of love. If you want to communicate eloquently in a digital economy, we need to have one language.
Okay, thank you for that big picture view, Amor. I want to go back to the nitty-gritty questions about how this deal will impact OFWs, for example, or payments. Ms. Leila, there's a question. So OFWs, your clients, will clearly benefit from this deal, but will they be asked to give up something in exchange? Perhaps will they be giving privacy-sensitive information in exchange for this, transactional data? Will there be a trade-off if they want to use this system, or you don't think so?
Yes, Mimi. There will always be some kind of trade-off since we're transacting using our personal information. In an e-payment infrastructure, one of the critical privacy concern is that of data sharing. And definitely, there has to be data sharing in the digital space. I guess what is critical for digital banks and the other banks as well is on the protection of those data that is being shared on a daily basis. And of course, us in digital banking has been very vocal in terms of our position on adoption. We always articulate that there are two sides in terms of protecting personal data. Of course, banks are required too. We are required, as mentioned by our panelist, Director Ostioko, that risk mitigants, risk controls, risk protocols must always be embedded in our banking systems. But again, on a personal take, it is consumers like me, like everyone else in this panel, that has also the responsibility to ensure that we protect the data that we have. We've been doing a lot of informational seminars on this and webinars for OFWs. And I think we're seeing heightened awareness and appreciation of how digital banking works for OFWs. Our numbers in terms of e-banking transactions is now running into billions. And we have been in operation for barely a year since we launched, and a few months since we got our digital license last March 2021. Yes, Mimi, OFWs are now doing informed decisions in terms of managing their finances and doing e-banking. But of course, there is a compromise that has to happen when we use a digital banking infrastructure. But we would like to assure our consumers, OFWs, non-OFWs, every Filipinos, that we in the banking industry do protect the data that is being shared to us.
Thank you, Leila. I want to get Todd's take on this because Todd is our cybersecurity guy. Todd, what do you think? What sort of cybersecurity risks are there, and are there mechanisms in place to protect our ownership of data?
Yep. So I think there's been a great discussion around that Ms. Leila pointed out around, that the banks as regulated institutions need to protect the data of their customers and make sure that they're proper stewards of customer data. The other side of that coin, though, is that increasingly, as Filipinos are transacting within the Philippines or as OFWs, we need to remember that it is still quite difficult for your typical Filipino to access to demonstrate creditworthiness and share their transaction data in order to actually get competitive offers, whether that's applying for their first home loan, or for a credit card, or a vehicle loan, or even just a cash loan because times are tight, right? And of course, we know the default are informal lenders, which may charge 20% or more per month. So in the same way that banks need to be stewards of personal data, the customers need to know how they can securely share that data upon their consent in order to access a broader range of financial services. And that's why I appreciated Amor's comment about the API economy and providing more access, because that's exactly what API-enabled data pipes and payment pipes, like the one that will be connecting soon, the Philippines and Singapore can enable. It's not just to enable fast transactions without intermediaries. It's also so that an OFW who has a demonstrated transaction history at the remittance center in Lucky Plaza in Singapore, or with PayNow, or the DBS Payla app locally in Singapore, can actually show that transaction data securely back to a lender or an institution to access credit at competitive rates. So I think when it comes to data protection, we need to remember, I think, that there is a responsibility of the banks to be proper stewards of that data. And there's also a responsibility to give customers secure but convenient access to their own data and be able to share that as they're applying for financial products in the future.
And the APIs, do they allow us to control our data?
Absolutely. So we could have a whole session on API standards and all that, but fundamentally there are global best practices, technical and operating standards for APIs, and you can think of the API. The best analogy I've heard is the API is the waiter at the restaurant. It is a standard. It is a professional technical service that runs your order back and forth to the chef and brings you your data, in this case, in a secure and professional way, rather than a custom pipe that's built between two entities. So it allows for scalability, it allows for standardization, so that OF Bank, for example, can plug into a single API that gives them access to, as an example, to PPMI's entire InstaPay network, right? Without needing to connect to all 140 members individually, right? So it's a huge enabler for technology, not only because it allows scalability, but also because there is already clear standards in place for what secure API looks like.
Okay, Todd, one more follow-up question. Are you seeing any concerns about data localization issues? Issue of local data storage requirements that, sensitive information must stay within the country where the person is, cannot go across the borders like the payments do.
Yeah, that is a dangerous question. I need to say that each country has specific regulations around data localization, both what kind of data remains localized and what sort of consent is required for data to be stored offshore. Indonesia's regulations, for example, are quite different than Singapore's and quite different than the Philippines. I think any technology company that's operating in financial technology, especially in this part of the world, needs to understand what the data localization requirements are and make sure that their infrastructure is set up accordingly.
Okay, thank you for that, Todd. I want to go now to Ma'am Melit of PPMI. Will there be any changes, ma'am, in the disputing process for international payments made by domestic customers because of this new partnership? Are you seeing any issues with that?
There might be, but right at the moment, being in the local context, the PPMI has dispute resolution mechanisms within each payment system. We have one for PesoNet, we have one for InstaPay, because they are different. They have different features and characteristics as far as payment transfers is concerned. We will need to have guidance and support from the BSP because they will be the ones coordinating directly as far as this particular linkage is concerned. Okay, so we have, and the member institutions are actually very mindful of this dispute resolution mechanism. We have an arbitration committee. So that's something that is in place right now and can always be expanded depending on the situation where we will find ourselves in moving forward. So it is in place within the Philippines.
Okay. Here's a question for all of our participants, whoever may want to answer it. This sort of cross-border payment system, the seamless, fast, instant, cheaper cross-border payment system, this is not a first in the world. In fact, the ASEAN bloc has been looking to create, this seamless cross-border payments between member states there's a framework for this, the ASEAN Payments Policy Framework. And what we're trying to do is emulate what the European Union has done, the EU's Single European Payments Area, or SEPA-style payments network. Started in 2008, fully implemented in 2014, that long, that's 6 years in the making. What lessons do you think can we learn from their experience, from the EU's experience, or from the other ASEAN countries that have done this before us, like Thailand, for example? Maybe we can start with Director Choco. Amor, maybe you guys want to take this?
Okay. Well,
the lessons we can learn from those who have done this.
Okay, so we can learn a lot from the EU experience on their interoperability and also on building a one economic bloc. The ASEAN have been discussing this experience, but we fall short of agreeing to have one currency for the countries. So what we have agreed at the ASEAN level, or what we are working on, is to be able to have a cross-border payments, but settlement will be based on your respective currencies. That's what we are working now on in the ASEAN. Meaning, if you are here in the Philippines and you happen to travel in Singapore, once you make a payment transactions, it's your peso account that will be settled, that will be debited or be used for settlement. The same thing with a Singaporean who is doing payment transactions in the Philippines. The discussion now and the agreement is between what happens now as far as clearing and settlement is concerned. But what's for consumers, they will be settling on their own respective countries. So that's the difference we have from the EU.
And since we're all on different fiat currencies, Amor, what about digital currencies? Because the central banks of Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and South Africa have just recently signed up to test the interoperability of central bank digital currencies for cross-border payments. It's dubbed as Project Dunbar. Amor, you're into digital currencies. Do you think it's not too far away for us, for the Philippines, to start having this conversation as well, cross-border payments using digital currencies, digital assets?
I'm very, I'm still quite cautious when it comes to promoting these new asset classes. For example, we've had a conversation before, Mimi, how we're seeing excellent use cases. For example, in the play to earn space, right? Kids as young as 13 years old, able to play and able to earn in crypto. And Ma'am Leila, I think I may have mentioned this to you, that the types of earnings that these kids are getting are approximating the kind of remittances we get out of Hong Kong from our OFWs. So there are actual use cases. And what we're doing in Digital Pilipinas is pursuing and promoting more of those use cases when it comes to crypto. Following what MD Ravi Menon said during the opening of SFF, and we follow this, when it comes though to things like investments, it's still a relatively gray area. It's not back. So I hope to be able to discuss it another time, things like stable coins or retail CBDCs with you, and see where this industry is headed towards. But definitely very interesting times for us in Digital Pilipinas in 2022, especially as it pertains to new asset classes.
Amor, from new asset classes to linkages, are you looking at Thailand? I mean, when you look at the possibilities, the lessons, are you looking at Thailand? Because apparently Thailand and Singapore launched the world's first linkage of real-time payment system. That happened in April this year. That's Thailand and Singapore. Now in June, Thailand signed another deal to launch their own QR payment linkage with Malaysia. And in August, Thailand launched one with Indonesia. Thailand is moving fast, Amor.
They are actually one of the important markets that we're looking at, as well as Indonesia. Now, yesterday, I was just in a meeting with all the other fintech heads across ASEAN. And we left off with a commitment to not just do bilateral relationships, but rather how do we have multilateral partnerships that cover all the various markets. So I think instead, this is a good first step, like a bilateral partnership. But really what we need to look into will be to power and support platforms that actually allow for all of us to talk and work and cooperate at the same time.
Okay, we have a question for Leila and Todd. What are the challenges of adoption for open finance amongst banks and Philippine companies? Let's start with Todd and then we'll get to Leila. Todd?
Sure, thank you, Mimi. I think, so one of the biggest challenges for adoption in open finance is not the tech. It is the perception that this requires a complete re-architecting of the tech. Right? It's the perception that in order to engage in an API economy, to build bank APIs and to enable scalability through an API infrastructure, that it requires completely changing all of your vendors, moving your whole core banking system, and undertaking a 5-year kind of capital transformation plan, right? The reality is much, much different, actually. And there's been a lot of momentum recently in various API services that can work with existing systems. And Brankas is actually implemented with a large Indonesian bank that had everything sitting on an IBM mainframe in a data center in the basement of the bank, right? And I think we're seeing some early progress here. The likes of BPI that's already launched several payment APIs and are present in most of the e-wallet and e-commerce apps already, where you can seamlessly link your BPI account and transfer funds instantly through a secure API. The likes of PNB that are undertaking significant digital transformation and are really elevating the brand of PNB as a digital bank. GoTime, which is of course, a South African digital banking leader that has recently teamed up with JG Summit and some other partners, and they're launching as one of the digital banks in the very near future. So I think these are all really encouraging developments, and they demonstrate that launching an open finance set of products and ecosystem as a bank, even if you're one of the old kind of the older, more storied financial institutions in the country, you can do it with a bit of as long as you're willing to tackle some of the organizational changes internal at the bank, because it does require a bit of a change of thinking and a change in operations relative to, let's say, brick and mortar, branch-based, relationship manager-based financial services. I imagine Leila's dealing with some of this now as she's building a digital-only bank as a sister company to state-owned land banks. So would love to hear her views as well.
Leila?
Yes, on the bank side, well, particularly with Land Bank and OF Bank, we don't have any standard APIs right now vetted by the government. Thus, there is a need to tweak or customize the integration process, because each of the fintech or each of the partner technology providers has different set of standards of API. And this is one of the areas we're looking forward to, having this interoperable payment infrastructure. The speed to market, the desired speed to market cannot be achieved 100%, because definitely different processes will require different mandates to complete. On the side of our customers, I think omnipresence, Mimi. We are yet to have a system basically where merchants are in, varied merchants for that matter, are in one platform, accessible to consumers inside and outside the country, and one that can be accessed everywhere or in many places, especially simultaneously, with merchants acceptance points available, readily accessible, that will really push and make digital payments move further than we are now in the digital space. So I guess what I'm saying now is this is a timely innovation that our government is taking a full step forward, so that every one of us in banking, in other industry as well, can provide our consumers the best e-banking service that is possible.
Okay, thank you for that, Leila. We have one more question. This is from Raul Dancel of the Straits Times. He says, I'm working on a story on the exponential growth of cashless transactions in the Philippines, with the pandemic being the catalyst. What impact will this agreement have on that? Who'd like to take this? Amor, Director Choco?
Well, I believe this can further grow the digital payments here in the country with the cross-border payments from Singapore, because this will, let's say, for example, the overseas Filipino workers in Singapore can send directly through their mobile phones to the recipients living in the countries. So I believe this will further spur the growth of digital payments here in our country.
Okay, yeah, Todd, go ahead.
Sure, just very quickly. I think also it's worth appreciating that a proper and real-time payment rail between Singapore and Philippines will also enable a whole new generation of fintech startups that are serving the needs of overseas Filipino workers. I mean, $3 billion passing through, and such a huge portion of that $3 billion is passing through 3 or 4 or 5 intermediaries, is taking a long time to arrive, is not as secure as it could be. And so giving a real-time payment rail that fintechs can make use of, either from a user experience point of view or actually building new financial products using that rail, will actually, I think, encourage a lot of innovation in the sector. And I suspect after this rail goes live that we will see new fintech startups and maybe the next unicorn that is building an OFW payment solution or financial services solution that's been enabled only because of this rail.
Yeah. If I may add also.
Yes, sir.
Let's not forget the e-commerce sector as well the MSMEs. Finally, most of them will be able to get on board and this start to be implemented.
Actually, that was going to be my next question. If I'm an MSME entrepreneur, who should I approach if I want to take advantage of this new rails, so to speak? Are there organizations I can call? Are there people I can call? Government agencies, tech companies that I need to approach to be able to be part of the system and benefit?
Well, the first institution that you should approach is your financial institution participating or a member of PPMI. That's all you have to do.
Okay. All right.
Michelle, I'd like to just add briefly to that. Absolutely support Director Estioco there. It's important that you only work with bodies that are properly and correctly regulated. The Department of Trade and Industry, in partnership with Digital Filipinas, we have a program called Business Without Borders. And the intent here is connecting properly vetted MSMEs to a platform, to a global platform that is also in partnership with the MAS, and that's called Praxtera. And what that allows you is to actually vet the good actors. No? So if you are vetted by the BSP, vetted by the MAS, always look for that seal, because that's how you know you're working with the good actors in the industry.
All right. Before we wrap up, yes, go ahead. Ma'am, go ahead.
I was just going to react to the question on the impact to digital payments for OFWs. Very, very big. At the moment, the OFW has arrangements with his own bank of account in the Philippines. So he goes to a Lucky Plaza and he goes to his bank there and fill up this form, etc. And then this goes through to the Philippines. Now, given the new initiative, the linkage between FastPay and between PayNow and InstaPay, then all he needs to do is have his own mobile. And as I mentioned earlier, this will just be part of the digital transformation usage. And that will really, really fast track everything.
Okay, thank you for that, Ma'am Milit. Final question, this one goes to Todd. What can this do for insurance cooperatives?
So I assume this is insurance and cooperatives. So for cooperatives, I think we need to remember that 50%, almost 50% of Filipinos are unbanked, that do not have a bank account. And of that population, the vast majority are many of them, I should say, are served by their local cooperative in their industry or in their region. And so I think enabling cooperatives to be online and plugged into domestic and international payment rails, domestic rails to access alternative data, is empowering for the people, frankly, that need it most. And so I think having an API technology infrastructure that's connecting to new payment rails like the Singapore Philippines announcement, I think will be fundamentally a driver for financial inclusion, and a lot of that will come through the cooperatives. And likewise for insurance. I mean, as insurance is moving online, there's more of a need for easier ways for customer to access those products, to see whether they qualify for certain products, to be able to build for life products, to be able to build, start building wealth, but doing so in a convenient way. And particularly for OFWs that may want to access local Pinoy products, insurance covers for their family or for themselves. Today, if they're sitting in Singapore, that's a bit complicated, but hopefully this rail can enable more seamless ways for OFWs to secure their health and the financial well-being of their family as well.
All right, thank you for that, Todd. And now I think we're ready for our final question to wrap up this conversation. This is one question for all of our participants. What is your ideal or wish list use case for open finance? What user story or user journey do you see as a game changer that will be made possible with open finance? Or is it just the novelty of being able to see all of your financial information in one place or app? So let's start with the ladies, and then we'll get to the, no, let's start with the gentlemen, and then we'll get to the ladies. Let's start with the Director Estioco, and then go to Todd, Leila, Ma'am Milit, and of course, some more. Director Estioco?
Yeah, I believe that open finance can open wider the digital payment transactions, because this will enable the people to have more control on its financial accounts and take advantage of a better terms for their funds, and they're more free to venture, to invest, or otherwise anytime they can withdraw if they don't feel secure. So
Okay.
this will be a big changer, the open finance.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, I think my wish list is, as a financial services customer, that I can pick and choose from the financial products that serve me the best, not just the bank that happens to be in my barangay, or the app that my friends are using, but rather I can take a home loan from the lender that's serving me the best, and I can access that from a financial services app that combines different accounts and different products that I have all in one place. It allows me for secure verification of my identity so that I can choose where to share my data. I want to make transaction data available on my accounting app, but I don't want it. I only want a one-time share with this product. And having that consent management allows customers choices, as the senior director has mentioned. It gives customers choice in how and where they interact with financial services, and it stimulates competition in the industry. It stimulates innovation, and it shifts the control, or the power, I should say, back in a stronger way to the customer to choose the financial product that serves them the best.
Okay, Leila?
With open banking, banks can provide clients access to personalized, frictionless digital banking experience. However, Mimi, to be able to do this, our clients must be willing to share their transactional data, which I mentioned earlier is perceived to be as one of the most privacy-sensitive forms of information. Also, us in banking must be able to win our clients' trust and communicate in a clear language that we are putting forward their demand and needs first, with the assurance of safe handling of sensitive payment data. Frictions around security and privacy in terms of open banking are the most significant barriers so far right now. And the reason behind consumer hesitancy towards open banking can be attributed really to their apprehension in terms of disclosure of their credentials. So we are in banking, digital banks and traditional banks are really conscious for the need to address this and to ensure to our clientele that all the personal data, all the personal credentials are safeguarded. And we are, per Todd earlier, we are stewarding it properly.
Okay, and Milit? Ma'am Milit?
There's only one thing that I would like to happen: strict implementation by the concerned financial institution on the customer's consent and protection of the data. Given that, the apprehension of the customer will be less.
All right, loud and clear. Amor?
Two quick case studies. This advocacy really started because our dream with a co-advocate is to really tech up the taho vendor. And I was saying, if I can get a taho vendor to be folded in immediately to the ecosystem, then maybe this one defining favorite Filipino food of mine will not be so threatened. No, but seriously, the vision for Digital Filipinas is to get to a point wherein we have control. We can choose who to give our data to. We can choose who to sell it ourselves, monetize it ourselves, and not be at the mercy of various forces. So let me just leave it at that for now, Mimi.
All right, we don't have much time. That wraps up our discussion. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. But before we let you guys go, we do need to take the photo op. We do need to take some pictures. We've got very interesting characters and personalities here. Allow me to do the counting. Just flash your brightest smile and let's all say FinTech. All right, we'll take 2 shots. 1, 2, say FinTech. FinTech.
Open finance.
Okay, let's try it one more time with open finance. The second shot. 1, 2, open finance.
Open finance.
Okay, I hope we got that. Two great pictures of our panelists, esteemed guests for this afternoon. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As the conversation with our panelists suggests, the FinTech Cooperation Agreement between the Philippines and Singapore will foster instantaneous, seamless, and cost-efficient cross-border financial transactions. In fact, the continuous remittance overflow brought by the OFWs from Singapore in the country influenced the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas and the Monetary Authority of Singapore to push through with this collaboration. With the digital channels that this collaboration will create, we can expect to experience a more convenient way of settling digital transactions. Through this partnership, beneficiaries like OFWs will have a more reliable and immediate way of doing digital payment, remittances, and transactions, while Philippine MSMEs can now transact beyond their economic comfort zones. Indeed, we can only hope that this historic partnership between Singapore and the Philippines will pave the way for more opportunities that can benefit the two ASEAN countries. We thank all of our guests today for their time and sharing their thoughts on the establishment of regional payment system involving the BSP and MAS. This brings our press conference to an end. We thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, Amor.
Thank you, Amor. Bye.